In June 2026, the world will turn its eyes to North America as the World Cup kicks off, the biggest football tournament on the planet and the most anticipated sporting event of the decade. For the United States, this is more than just another World Cup. It's a golden link in a chain of super events that includes the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles, the Ryder Cup, and the 250th anniversary of the nation's founding. Some are already calling this America's sports decade, a stretch of time where every goal, every performance, every sold-out stadium could become a historic milestone, not just in sports, but in the global economy and political landscape. Forecasts from FIFA and leading economic institutions suggest that World Cup 2026 could bring in hundreds of billions of dollars for the US, create hundreds of thousands of jobs, and provide a massive boost to the country's international image. From major metropolises like New York, Los Angeles, and Dallas, to smaller cities like Kansas City and Cincinnati, all are banking on a wave of tourism, revenue, and unprecedented global exposure. NFL stadiums will be transformed into football cathedrals. Nightlife districts are expected to explode with music, food, and international culture. Some experts have even likened this World Cup to a massive stimulus package that the US doesn't have to pay for upfront. It just needs to seize the moment. But just as that golden dream comes into view, cracks are beginning to show. Issues around infrastructure, organizing costs, and most critically, visa and immigration policies are prompting serious questions. Is the US tying its own hands right before the starting whistle? Will hundreds of thousands of fans from South America, Asia, and Africa, the regions most passionate about football, be able to easily make it to the US to soak in the World Cup atmosphere? Or will they be blocked by bureaucratic hurdles, visa delays that stretch for hundreds of days, and skyrocketing application fees? That's why the story of World Cup 2026 goes far beyond the boundaries of a sporting event. It becomes a mirror reflecting both the strength and the limitations of America in the Trump-J.D. Vance era. On a complex chessboard where sports, economics, trade, and politics intersect, the World Cup is a true test. Is America confidently opening its doors to the world, or slowly closing them in caution and protectionism? And from that very starting point, we begin to see that the World Cup isn't just about thrilling matches. It's also about massive economic benefits and invaluable soft power. To understand how a single football can shake entire economies, let's dive into the numbers, the ones that speak volumes, and the meaningful comparisons with past World Cups, where sport became a vehicle for diplomacy, commerce, and global influence. From an economic perspective, the 2026 World Cup is shaping up to be a massive money-printing machine ready to power up on American soil. According to reports from FIFA and the World Trade Organization, the tournament is expected to generate up to $40.9 billion for the global GDP, along with the equivalent of over 824,000 full-time jobs. Among all participating nations, the United States stands to benefit the most, thanks to its modern sports infrastructure and its central role in hosting. In Los Angeles alone, one of the key host cities, the World Cup is projected to bring in $594 million in direct economic value, $243 million in wages for workers, and over $34.9 million in tax revenue for local authorities. These numbers aren't just dry statistics. They represent a powerful promise of economic momentum at a time when pressure is mounting on multiple fronts. When these figures are compared to previous World Cups, the sheer economic power of a global sporting event becomes even more apparent. Russia 2018 saw its GDP boosted by tens of billions of dollars, 315,000 new jobs, and more than 3 million international tourists flooding cities like Moscow, St. Petersburg, and Sochi. Qatar 2022, despite criticism over its massive construction costs, still raked in over $20 billion in revenue and triggered an unprecedented tourism boom in the Middle East. The World Cup isn't just about football. It's an engine that revs up nighttime economies. Bars, restaurants, hotels, and street entertainment all thrive from the wave of fans and tourists. And for a country like the US, already home to world-leading restaurant chains, hotel networks, and entertainment hubs, that ripple effect is amplified many times over. But the greatest value of the World Cup goes beyond money. It lies in what strategists call soft power. a nation's ability to leave an impression, build goodwill, and extend its influence through culture and image. For 30 days, every camera lens, every news report, every online conversation will orbit around the host nation. That image is etched into the minds of billions. A stunning goal, a vibrant city, a warm welcome. These are the moments that can reshape the world's perception of a country. South Africa used the 2010 World Cup to redefine its post-apartheid image, turning itself into a beacon of peace and tourism. Brazil 2014, despite infrastructure criticisms, once again captivated the world with the magic of football and samba. Even tiny Qatar used the World Cup to carve out a bold statement on the Middle East's political map. The US, as a global superpower, understands that the World Cup is an opportunity to reinforce its image as a cultural lighthouse, a land of freedom, diversity, and opportunity. American media giants will also seize this moment to lead in broadcast technology, from VR and 4K experiences to turning every on-field highlight into a global media product. Billion-dollar ad deals, concerts piggybacking off the tournament, and parallel cultural exchange events will ensure that America not only wins economically, but also scores big in the soft power game. Yet here lies the paradox. The more economic and diplomatic opportunities the World Cup presents, the more the US finds itself grappling with challenges rooted in its own policies. The golden dream of the tournament could be clouded if millions of international fans are unable to set foot in the country due to visa barriers, entry costs, and strict security protocols. Instead of an image of open arms welcoming the world, the US faces the threat of a narrative flipped on its head, a closed door, where fans' dreams are stuck in visa applications that drag on for hundreds of days. And it's from this point that the story takes us into another dimension, the looming challenges of visa policy and immigration infrastructure, where the US risks losing its home field advantage before the first whistle even blows. If the economic benefits and soft power of the 2026 World Cup paint a radiant horizon, then just behind the curtain lies a stark paradox. America is quietly building invisible walls that could keep millions of fans out. The problem isn't football, it's the visa stamps, the months-long entry procedures, and the rising costs that are becoming increasingly prohibitive. These are the barriers that threaten to turn the golden dream into a persistent headache for Washington. The data speaks for itself. In Colombia, hopeful visitors must wait up to 398 days, more than a year, just to secure a visa interview. In Mexico, one of the tournament's co-hosts, the wait time exceeds 800 days. Meanwhile, the Trump administration introduced the visa integrity fee, a new charge of $250, 2 to 2.5 times more than before. For a family of 4 from South America or Asia, the visa fees alone could be discouraging. And that's before airfare, match tickets, or local expenses are even considered. Football has long been called the people's sport, but at a US-hosted World Cup, the dream of cheering for your national team may become a luxury few can afford. This is no longer just theoretical. In 2025, when the US hosted the Club World Cup, international attendance dropped by 10% due to visa hurdles. Booking Holdings, the Financial Times, AP News, and The Guardian all reported the same sentiment. International fans no longer feel welcome. The image of a once open America is being replaced by a perception of a country closed off and locked down. Instead of welcoming streams of fans bearing flags, songs, and vibrant cultural energy, the US is beginning to resemble a nation wary and withdrawn from the world. While the US complicates its own path, its co-hosts are moving in the opposite direction. Canada has expanded its ETA policy, allowing citizens of dozens of countries to gain entry in just minutes, simple online registration. Mexico has gone even further. Many nationalities are visa exempt, and anyone with a valid US, Canadian, or Schengen visa can enter with ease. With low costs, a passionate football culture, and easy entry, Mexico is becoming a natural magnet for younger fans. Canada, with its transparent, safe, and warm and welcoming image, is emerging as a top destination for sponsors, neutral attendees, and side events surrounding the World Cup. The worry now is that fan flows and investment capital could begin drifting away from the US, drawn toward Canada and Mexico. The image of grand American stadiums, but dotted with empty seats during lower stakes matches, would be a serious blow to national prestige, because the World Cup isn't just about GDP figures. It's a global broadcast, a stream of live footage sent out to every corner of the world. If that image reflects a country with vast resources but a closed heart, the outcome may be nothing more than bitter comparisons to its more welcoming co-hosts. At its core, this paradox stems from Washington's own hardline domestic policies. The Trump J.D. Vance administration sees the World Cup as a chance to showcase immigration discipline, but in doing so, it risks eroding key strategic advantages. When South American fans opt for Mexico, when European companies favor Canada, the U.S. loses not just revenue, it loses leadership. On the diplomatic chessboard, that's a dangerous retreat. And the paradox doesn't stop at visas or entry policies. It spills into another arena, one that may seem unrelated, but is deeply intertwined: trade. Even as the U.S. needs Canada as a partner in hosting the World Cup, Washington has slapped a 50% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum, prompting a series of retaliations. From the pitch, we're pulled straight into the economic playing field, where the World Cup becomes a mirror reflecting the tangled dance of cooperation and confrontation in U.S.-Canada relations. If visa barriers have already cost the U.S. a share of its World Cup spotlight, then on another front, the ongoing trade tensions with Canada are pushing Washington into an even deeper dilemma. Football was meant to be a bridge, a unifying thread between the three co-host nations of the 2026 World Cup, yet instead, the US and Canada have found themselves locked in a bitter economic standoff. Since the Trump administration reinstated a 50% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum, once close neighborly ties have grown taut like a strained wire. American industries that rely heavily on northern supply chains have felt the backlash immediately. Harley-Davidson began considering shifting production overseas to avoid soaring costs. The already stressed U.S. housing market took another hit as taxes on imported Canadian lumber drove home prices to record highs. From auto factories to construction firms, the rising chorus of frustration over skyrocketing expenses has echoed across the country. On the other side of the border, Prime Minister Mark Carney hasn't backed down. With a firm stance, he declared, "Canada will not kneel." Ottawa responded with retaliatory tariffs targeting American agricultural goods, motorcycles, and industrial products. Across the media, that message rang out loud and clear. Canada is open to partnership, but it will not accept the role of a second-tier ally. The fragile balance between collaboration and confrontation has been disrupted, leaving a lingering fracture right at the heart of the World Cup's tri-nation alliance. What's ironic is that while millions of fans eagerly await a festival of football, politicians on both sides of the border are turning the World Cup into the shadow of a trade war. The U.S. needs Canada to support key infrastructure, from stadiums in Toronto and Vancouver to logistics and services. In turn, Canada needs the U.S. to maintain the tournament's appeal and to tap into the vast capital of the world's largest spectator market. Yet, the growing tariff walls only deepen the divide, raising a sobering question. Will the 2026 World Cup still be a symbol of unity or a vivid demonstration of a fractured alliance? From a wider lens, this is the clearest reflection of a core contradiction in the age of globalization. Sports call for unity, while politics and trade increasingly drive nations apart. A single shot on goal can ignite cheers from tens of thousands, but one signature on a tariff order can rattle entire economies. The World Cup, then, is no longer just 90 minutes of football. It's a test of whether countries can rise above their differences to find common ground again. And from the US-Canada trade dispute, another question emerges more clearly than ever. When three nations share one tournament, will they walk a unified path or each chart their own strategy? Because behind the gleaming stadiums lies a trio of contrasting approaches. The US with immense power but policies that bind its hands, Canada with its reputation for transparency and trust, and Mexico buzzing with energy, flexibility, and low costs. This is the strategic crossroads that the 2026 World Cup will lay bare before the entire world. The 2026 World Cup is more than just a football tournament. It's a stage where three host nations will simultaneously showcase their strength, identity, and unique strategies. The United States, Canada, and Mexico, countries that share borders and history, are stepping into this global spotlight, each with a different story to tell. And it is these differing narratives that will ultimately shape what each nation takes away after the final whistle blows. For the United States, the greatest advantage lies in its massive scale. No other country in the world can match its sports infrastructure. NFL stadiums that seat tens of thousands, sprawling highway systems, major international airports, and cutting-edge broadcast technology. American media giants are poised to elevate the World Cup experience with virtual reality, 8K streaming, and multi-platform coverage. On paper, the US is the tournament's giant, but paradoxically, this giant is shackled by its own policies, restrictive visa rules, sky-high costs, and entry barriers reinforced by the Trump administration. International fans may be turned away at the border. Sponsors are increasingly wary of the closed-door image. And so, while America's stage may be grand, its spotlight risks fading without the vibrant global audience it was built to welcome. A powerful giant caught in chains of its own making. In contrast, Canada has chosen a path of transparency and openness. With a reputation for stability, safety, and trust, Canada is using the World Cup to cement its image as the ideal host. Easy entry policies, reasonable costs, and a well-organized environment make it an attractive destination, not just for fans, but for sponsors and international organizations as well. Stadiums in Toronto and Vancouver will serve not only as venues for matches, but also as hubs for cultural, economic, and diplomatic events. Canada knows it lacks the scale of the US or the electric energy of Mexico, but it's betting on its image as a trusted friend, and that alone could earn it the highest marks in international prestige once the tournament ends. Mexico, the third partner in this World Cup trio, enters the game with a completely different advantage: energy and affordability. In Mexico, football isn't just a sport, it's a religion. Iconic stadiums like Estadio Azteca will become sacred grounds for young fans from around the world. With low living costs, flexible visa policies, and a vibrant cultural atmosphere, Mexico is fast becoming the go-to destination for younger audiences, for groups of friends looking to experience the World Cup in full without breaking the bank. If the US represents scale and spectacle, and Canada brings reliability and restraint, then Mexico is pure joy, where fans feel welcomed, immersed, and free to live the football festival to the fullest. As a result, the 2026 World Cup may witness a unique flow of people and capital: neutral fans, major sponsors, and key diplomatic events leaning toward Canada, energetic crowds and buzzing youth markets flooding into Mexico, while the US, despite being the tournament's central force, risks losing both revenue and soft spotlight to its co-hosts. It's a painful paradox for a superpower used to leading from the front. And this paradox becomes even more bitter when viewed through the lens of US domestic politics. Instead of seizing the opportunity to reaffirm its global leadership, the Trump J.D. Vance administration has chosen to turn the World Cup into a political instrument, tightening immigration and doubling down on an image of law and order. But will this strategy strengthen America's influence, or simply cast it as the economic winner that lost the public narrative? To answer that, we'll need to look deeper inside the United States, where the ambitions of Trump and J.D. Vance are creating a power paradox unlike anything the country has ever seen. Inside the heart of America, where politics always operates with a blend of overt maneuvering and behind-the-scenes calculation, the 2026 World Cup is seen as far more than just a sporting event or economic opportunity. For Donald Trump and his lieutenant J.D. Vance, it is a political stage, a platform where every policy, every statement can become a lever of power. And yet, the greatest paradox lies here. In their attempt to turn the World Cup into a golden political trophy, they may be inadvertently eroding the very strategic advantage the U.S. stands to gain. J.D. Vance once bluntly warned, "If you don't leave after the match, immigration officers will come find you." Meant to sound tough and reassuring to domestic voters, the message echoed across the globe as something far more chilling. Fans aren't guests. They're suspects under surveillance. In the eyes of the international community, a nation once praised for openness now resembles a walled fortress. Fans want to attend for the love of the game, but worry about being treated like intruders. Global sponsors envision investing in a celebration, but hesitate, uncertain if audiences will truly be welcomed. Trump, with his instinct for spectacle, hasn't missed a beat. He appeared alongside FIFA President Gianni Infantino, displayed the Golden Trophy at the White House, and declared that the U.S. would be the center of the football world in 2026. He seized every photo op, every headline, to craft the image of a leader raising America to new heights. But behind the camera lights, behind the polished statements, stood the barriers: restrictive immigration rules, heavy-handed security, and an undercurrent of suspicion. The world saw another story, a country eager to host but reluctant to share. Here's where the paradox deepens. On paper, the US has everything to win big: tens of billions in revenue, hundreds of thousands of jobs, and reinforced cultural stature. But in practice, protectionist policies and a hardline immigration stance are causing Washington to forfeit its soft power gains. Americans may applaud their government's control, but to much of the world, the image is one of retreat, a superpower shrinking away from openness. This goes far beyond football. It reveals the very nature of American politics in the Trump-Vance era, a country that wants to lead yet also wants to tighten its grip, that craves the global spotlight yet fears losing its core identity. In this internal tug-of-war, the World Cup becomes the clearest symbol of a power paradox, a nation poised to win economically, but stumbling in the race for global image and influence. And from this paradox, we're forced to look ahead. If the US refuses to change course, if it keeps closing in rather than opening up, where does the future tilt? Will Canada and Mexico seize the moment to rise as new diplomatic and economic beacons? The 2026 World Cup, then, is no longer just a tournament. It is a test, a proving ground for geopolitical scenarios that could reshape the world order in the decade to come. If we view the 2026 World Cup as a football match, the United States is now stepping into the second half with a tangled web of overlapping scenarios. From the global stands, billions of eyes are watching, not just for the goals scored on the field, but to see whether Washington will turn this opportunity into triumph or stumble into defeat on its own home turf. And in this strategic match, every policy decision made today could shape not only the fate of this World Cup, but America's standing in the world order for years to come. The first and most optimistic scenario is reform. Rather than sticking to cumbersome procedures, Washington could expand visa interview waivers for millions of applicants, implement AI systems for rapid processing, and launch a bold global media campaign with a simple, powerful message: fans are welcome. With just a few tangible policy shifts and a clear signal to the world, the US could transform the World Cup into proof of its openness and reassert its central role on the world stage. Tourists would flood in, sponsors and international media would follow. Each match would become a global moment, and more importantly, it would mark a turning point, a declaration that America still knows how to balance power with grace. But if the second scenario unfolds, if the US chooses to stay rigid and keep tightening its grip, the tide could turn dramatically. Visa barriers remain, entry costs stack up, and the golden opportunities begin slipping into the hands of Canada and Mexico. Neutral fans, major sponsors, and side events would gravitate toward the more accessible co-hosts. Mexico would use its passionate football culture to assert its identity. Canada would turn its reputation for safety and transparency into a soft power asset. Meanwhile, despite its immense infrastructure and resources, the US could find itself slowly fading from the center of attention. The cost wouldn't just be in lost revenue, it would be in the erosion of soft power, a tool no global superpower can afford to surrender. The impact reaches far beyond sports. Historically, the World Cup has been a stage for trade deals, investment talks, even diplomatic breakthroughs. South Africa 2010 became a launchpad for renewed cooperation with the continent and the world. Russia 2018, despite tensions with the West, used the tournament to project strength and hospitality. If the US misses its chance, it forfeits the opportunity to turn the World Cup into a diplomatic theater, a space where a handshake on the sidelines could pave the way for billion-dollar economic agreements. As America wrestles with its internal contradictions, Canada and Mexico are emerging as rising stars in regional diplomacy. Canada will use the World Cup spotlight to promote its role in new trade agreements and position itself as a reliable bridge between the US, Europe, and Asia. Mexico, ever nimble, sees the tournament as a magnet for tourism and infrastructure investment, a chance to solidify its place as the cultural and economic hub of Latin America. Both countries could leverage America's internal friction to strengthen their own positions in the global game. And when the dust settles, perhaps the defining image won't be a goal scored, but a lingering question. With all its power and potential, can the United States become a welcoming superpower, or will it slip into the role of a lonely giant? In today's globalized world, true power doesn't just come from military might or economic strength, it comes from the ability to open up to the world. The 2026 World Cup is the ultimate stress test, where one decision can shape the course of a decade. And if America hesitates, the historic goal may be scored not by the expected host, but by the so-called co-hosts once seen as just supporting players. On the surface, the 2026 World Cup is just a month-long sporting event. But look deeper and it becomes a mirror, one that reflects the full spectrum of our world: economic power, political resolve, and each nation's willingness to open its arms to the global community. The goals, the saves, the roaring stands, these are just the surface. Beneath it all lies a much larger match, where soft power, national image, and the future of diplomacy are all on the line. Today, America stands at a crossroads. On one side lies immense opportunity: billions in revenue, hundreds of thousands of jobs, and a glowing national image beamed through cameras to every corner of the planet. On the other side looms the risk of losing itself, buried under visa barriers, rigid immigration policies, trade tensions, and a cautious approach to global engagement. In football, one goal can change the entire game. In politics, one decision can shape the course of a decade. And so the question must be asked, will the US take the shot, a shot at history, with a strike called openness and reform? The 2026 World Cup isn't just a game for 22 players on the pitch. It's a contest between leaders, strategists, and policymakers whose choices will impact billions of lives. It won't just decide who lifts the trophy. It will determine which country emerges with renewed stature, amplified soft power, and an image worthy of the world's admiration. Ladies and gentlemen, as you reflect on this analysis, we invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Will the US emerge a winner or miss its moment? And if you found this discussion insightful, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and join us for more deep dives where football, politics, and geopolitics intersect to paint the portrait of our time. Because this match, without a doubt, is far bigger than the game itself.